Hey, it's Michael here. I'm here with my friend Snowy, Milieu in French, Tintin's intrepid companion. I'm here to help Alarmed Effect 4250, a friend from Reddit who's actually from France, and ask a question about a certain, I don't know where it's from. I guess it's QAS, question number 37, writing about gerunds. The original thread that Alarmed Effect 4250 put up was asking about, how do you punctuate gerunds? When can you have a comma? So I want to go over this particular question for my friend, and let's bring up the tablet. Here we see the question itself. Again, I don't know where it's from, but we have question number 37. So the first thing I do when I look at these questions on the writing side is I want to say, well, how are they similar? How are they distinct? I don't even bother reading it yet. We've read this from other questions, and we certainly need to read it to answer this question. So I could do this one first, since it's not a grammar question, then I know the context a little bit better. But meanwhile, when I am addressing the question itself, I want to say, how are they similar? How are they distinct? So I notice here, there's no punctuation in here anywhere. Here we have a comma here, and a colon here. So I got four possibilities. The commas, there's a pause between here. So let's look at what these things do. Now, colon is the what we call the low-hanging fruit for our eliminations. It's the easiest one to get. So when we look at a colon or a dash or semicolon, we know the rules. In this case, a colon must be preceded by an independent clause, and it can be followed by anything, except it cannot interrupt a necessary or requisite part of a sentence. So if I were to say, I went to the store that was open on Tuesday, or something like that. I cannot put a colon in the middle of that, because that was open is what we call an adjective or relative clause that's describing the store. So I can't separate an adjective from the noun it describes by a comma. So I can't put a colon there. Otherwise, as long as I have an independent clause before the colon, then it's okay. So when I look at this one here, so up to project, I go here, Patterson, subject, had long wanted. So I have a past perfect verb here, had long wanted to develop a project. Okay, so that is a sentence that could stand. Patterson had long wanted to develop a project. Bam, that could be a complete thought and sentence. So I do have an independent clause. So I cannot eliminate using the, if there was a dependent clause prior to there or not. So I have to go with it. But I can look at this and go, well, do I need a pause here? Now remember, what commas do. A comma is to allow the reader to breathe. In other words, take a breath in between these thoughts without a full stop. So a period is a full stop. A complete cycle is a period. A comma is a partial pause in the middle of a sentence. So we want to pause between things that are somewhat separated. We take that breath, but when we don't have that breath, that means it's requisite or necessary information. And in this case, we look at this part of the clause. Patterson had long wanted to develop. Okay, well, that's an incomplete thought, isn't it? He long wanted to develop. Well, develop what? This is, by the way, an infinitive. Infinitive, be an N there. To develop is an infinitive. It's acting as a noun. Now, but notice something when these verbs as a participle, writing. This is a present participle. In the ing form, it could be a noun called a gerund, or an adjective called a present participle adjective, or the ed form is the past participle adjective. So I could say in a couple ways how the word to cook is a verb. So I cook food, or I could also say I eat cooked food. So that ed form would be an adjective, or the cooking food is ready. So that I'm describing the food by its cooking. Or I could say cooking is fun as a noun. So we have that ing and ed forms, which is a participle, which are acting either as an action. I am cooking, or I had been cooking. So we have those auxiliary verbs, had, long, wanted, are creating the participle here, or acting as a noun, gerund, or in the ing form, or as an adjective in either ed or ing form of that verb participle. In this case, the infinitive is a noun. It's the object of I had long wanted. What? To develop. Now, notice how all of these senses of the participles and the infinitives of the verbs, they're acting as they may be acting as a different part of speech, noun, adjective, but they still retain some of that verbness in them, that sense of action. So when we say I'd wanted to develop, it's not an action verb, because I'm not developing. He wanted to develop was the object of what he wanted, or she, Patterson, but it still needs a result of that action. that to develop the infinitive retains. And so we have to develop a project exploring. So here we have requisite or modifying information describing what that is to be developed. It's sort of an object of to develop. And then this exploring is describing the project here. So exploring is actually a present participle adjective because it describes exploring. But in any case, I do not want a pause there. So I get rid of C and D. So Patterson had long wanted to develop a project exploring. Now for B here, so we have a comma here. I look at this and I go, well, do I need a comma before my preposition between? So with prepositions, we don't use commas because a preposition is a modifier. So it describes, it has an object. So I can say the book on the table. This is like a big table. This is just a adjective that follows a big book. Where is it? It's on the table. Or I could say a big book on the table. I have the adjectives that are not separated without punctuation. So this is acting as an adjective describing the book. Where is it? It's on the table. And so I don't have any punctuation separating it, so I get rid of B here. Now, when prepositions do have a comma separating them, it's usually when they act as an introductory phrase. On the table, comma, was a big book. So at that point, I can separate it. And the same thing with these participial phrases that are started by a gerund or a present or past participle at the beginning of a sentence, that becomes an introductory clause. But when it's mid-flowing through the middle of the sentence, and if this was alarmed effect 4250's question, it generally does not have a comma, although it can. But in this case, in this sentence here, it does not. So we have our answer A. Now let's get into a little bit more of the mechanics of the sentence so you can really see how it goes. So what I've done here, I've got a, I wonder what time of year this is. Must be Christmas. This is my girl Stella. Her name is Stella d'Artois because her dad is from the Artois region of France. And this is my lovely wife, Teresa. Let me get to, and our other dogs, Puck and Artemis here. I put this into something called this sentence diagrammer. It's a freebie program on the Windows Store. I buy it. I give them money because I like what they did, and I also don't want the ads. So for free, you get some ads. But the sentence diagram is a program that tells us how a sentence works. So I put that sentence in here in the correct form. No pauses. And by the way, it's part of a larger sentence, but I'm only worried about this clause. And it tells us what it ends up being. Now, being a program, it can't think, so it really can't all it does is says, well, this is the way this word works, so maybe between goes here, but it actually doesn't work there because between is describing the connection, not the project in our sentence here. So I don't like this particular one, and so I want to go find where the between is correctly describing not the exploring, it's describing number 5 here, the connection. So it's connection between writing and the world. So that's our more accurate use of the word between. But let's break these down. We have our subject, we have our verb, we have our adverb, long wanted, and then now we have our object, which is the infinitive, to develop. That's what he wanted. Now we can look at this word project. He had long wanted a project. Well, it could be an object as well of had wanted. We could also see it as an object of to develop, even though this is acting as a noun. It has that noun sense. What does he want to develop? A project. So I like to see it as an object of the infinitive to develop, but we could also see it as an object of the verb to wanted. But either way, it works the same in terms of our diagram here. So we want to develop a project. Now here's where we get to the real question here, exploring. Exploring is what we call a participle modifier in this sense. I could go to one of these other interpretations of it, and here we have exploring connection. Exploring here is the noun, and the connection is and the project is describing the exploring. A project exploring, that would be what we call an attributive noun, where the noun becomes like dog food, becomes an adjective, but I don't believe it's acting that way, but it doesn't really matter because either way it would not have any punctuation separating the two. But here I think we more correctly see exploring is a adjective, a present participle adjective. Now what is it exploring? Because we're describing it. He wanted to develop a project, and then I'm going to say like a big project. No, it's a project exploring. And then we have our connection as the object of exploring. Remember, our participles maintain that verbiness in them, even though it's acting as an adjective, and it has the object of exploring. And then what is exploring? Well, a connection. And what about that connection? Now we have our preposition describing connection, thus no punctuation separating them, connection, writing, and the world. Alrighty, I do hope that helps. Let's go back off my thing here. The takeaway here, my friend, alarmed effect 4250 is modifiers are not separated from the thing they modify by a comma. And in this case, the modifier exploring is a present participle adjective. It's not a noun. But again, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of look upon those ing forms of the verbs when they're not acting as an action verb. It's either a noun or an adjective. It doesn't really matter. They operate grammatically the same. So I don't think you need to worry too much. Is it a present participle, or is it an adjective, or is it a gerund? Worry about them the same, unless you can see that as a gerund it's acting specifically as an object, such as in this one where it's the object of the preposition between writing. Writing is a present participle. I'm sorry, it's present participle, but it's a gerund, so it's the object of the preposition between. Or if it becomes the subject or the direct object of a sentence, writing is fun. So writing is our gerund verb, present participle gerund noun. God, you trip over all these words, grammar, yay. Becomes the subject of the sentence, and it's a noun. But when you see it as a modifying element, you know, just doesn't matter whether it's a gerund or an adjective. Just see, because it operates grammatically the same. Hope that helps. Let me know on Reddit if you have any other questions, or contact me directly. Anybody, glad to help out whenever I have an opportunity. See you later.